The Bengals are on a two-game winning streak, but during that time, the offense has had its share of rocky play. Let's try to figure out why it's happened with a thorough review of this week's film.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco, along with your host, James Rapine. Today, as always, joined on Tuesday or Monday, depending on when you're listening, by Mike Santagata, who you can find on Twitter at Bengals_Sands. You can find his work at Bengals Talk SI. You can find his podcast. It's always game day in Cincinnati as well. We are the Locked On Bengals podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Shout out to the everydayers. Shout out to those of you who make us your first listen. We appreciate those of you who make us part of your daily life so very much. And welcome in to everyone who is new to the show. You can always hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss an episode. And we do appreciate that support as well. Today, we are going to be diving into the film from the Bengals week seven win against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland, losing track of which week it is already, only 7 weeks into the season. This episode brought to you by Game Time, where you can save $20 on your first purchase of tickets in the app by using promo code LOCKEDONNFL. And guys, as we do, let's start with the offense, which was really fun to watch early in the season and has been a bit frustrating to watch in the last couple of games against Shane Bowen and Jim Schwartz coached defenses. And Mike, when you think about what we've seen over the last 2 weeks, are there themes from an offensive design perspective, from any particular players that stand out, or has it been different things from last week to this week?
I think it's different. This one to me felt like the Bengals' entire game plan focused on the Browns. And Jim Schwartz's entire tenure have run about 70% man coverage, usually single high man coverage. We've got the horses to do that. We can lock down your wide receivers, and they've done that against the Bengals too. That is how they've shut down the Bengals, is mostly man coverage with these awesome corners, physical corners. They're able to play against them. And you get into this game, and I think they ran like 15% man coverage. So just everything that you game plan goes out the window. Now you can argue it took them too long to realize what was happening or to believe what was happening, like that, oh, this isn't just a changeup. But typically the Schwartz defense against the Bengals in general is like that single high man coverage. And then the changeup off of that is rolling into the Tampa 2. And it kind of just did reverse, where like, we're going to look like we're man coverage. It's not like they came out there and they just looked like they're in Tampa 2, two deep safeties, corners rolled up, and the overhangs back, or whatever gives you the Tampa 2 indicator. They rolled up like they're in single high, even on that 4th and 2. I think this is the best example because that's your gotta have it play. And I actually was okay with it. They got into a bunch. That's great against man. They had a switch release, good against man. And they had a sit route and a guy that's running away from man coverage. Well, that goes out the window when they are playing, I said it twice, but phrase twice, but they moved to play Tampa 2 and they're really rolled up at the sticks. So instead of having something that could beat that, you've got a one-on-one beater on the backside to Jamar Chase, a deep route that's covered by a safety on the other side, and then 2 routes that were supposed to be an easy answer against what the Browns always play. Because when you get in the short yardage situations, that goes from, if the Browns are at 70% generally on man coverage, it's got to be like 90 to 95% in short yardage. There's almost no time, especially 4th down, where you're going to play zone coverage and allow guys to catch the ball underneath. But then, of course, they didn't allow guys to catch the ball underneath. But that just felt like a good example of like what was happening, especially early in that game. Just the Bengals had a game plan to beat them, and they took too long to adapt to what the Browns were doing. But the Browns deserve some credit here because Jim Schwartz had a heck of a game plan himself and was able to. It's kind of like when you get back down in the post and they pull the chair. He pulled the chair on them. You thought you're getting this, and then pull the chair, go steal the ball, and that's how they're able to stop this offense. To me, that's what I saw.
What triggered the offense to score and go 2 touchdowns in their first 3 possessions of the second half? Because we all know how ugly it was in the first half, and then it's not like they had a bunch of 10-play drives. It was a 5-play drive and a 4-play drive, and they get into the end zone twice. What changed there? What was different?
Yeah, I felt like they took advantage of the opportunities when they finally were getting some one-on-ones, because it wasn't just 2 deep zone coverage. Could think of a couple of plays where obviously the Jamar Chase back shoulder, the thing about playing against the Browns was it feels like that was just never there. Just those corners were always able to break that pass up, and then you get the touchdown on it. So that to me is almost like kind of luck, where it's not really like they designed something to beat their defense. They got an opportunity and they took advantage of it. The T. Higgins slant route, they're playing a weird red zone type of coverage with some corner who is not one of their big three on T. Higgins. That was an easy one. But then you also they run into invert too, which is Jim Schwartz likes doing that, and went from being one of the most hated coverages to now I think people like it, but they just get a deep out against that, and that's a free 15 yards. And that's why people used to hate that coverage, was that you could run deep outs and stuff that were just free 15 yards and guys out of position, like corners trying to play deep halves when they're not used to playing that. So I don't know if there was really some type of sustained success that they figured out to go along with their offense, but it felt more like the playmakers showed up and they made plays, and that's how they scored.
They beat man a couple times. They got it on those touchdowns was one of my takeaways, but they could have targeted some of these corners in man, I thought, a little bit more often instead of just, throwing balls up to Denzel Ward's coverage, and made a good play against Andre Josevich, had a pretty badly underthrown ball to T. Higgins that could have been a big play with Denzel Ward in coverage there. Denzel Ward, again, making a play to break up that pass. What did you think of Joe Burrow, though, in this game? Do you think that it's a offensive game plan issue where they just get out coached too often, and maybe they're a little bit too slow to adjust from a schematic perspective from what they're getting versus what they expected? Or was Burrow not executing at a level where maybe there were some opportunities early on that would have made this thing look different?
I don't think there were a ton of opportunities for him. And that's different from last week, because last week I thought there were opportunities and he was missing them. This week, I didn't think there were a ton of opportunities that were like, oh, Burrow just didn't see it. He didn't see it well. I mean, maybe you could point to a couple of things, but when I was looking at the plays and trying to think of the progression of where he would be looking on this play, not trying to see some backside thing that happened after the ball was thrown, I didn't really see a lot of opportunities for him to go make plays. I thought the protection was good. That was what was interesting. And it wasn't great, but I thought it was good. It was the best it's probably been against the Browns, picking up stunts and everything. But it just felt to me in this game, they got out coached, at least for the first half or so of this game. And then really, I mean, in the third quarter, the playmakers are winning. So it wasn't like they drew up the adjustment and were able to overcome it. Biggest issue too is just, we didn't even mention this yet, but the run game. I mean, you could talk about a couple, they had the big play off the right side where the end crashes in and Chase Brown's able to scoot around it. And you could talk about the play that got called back, but a majority of the run game was terrible. The blocking was just getting decimated. Dalvin Tomlinson, Myles Garrett, like it wasn't just the stars, but like your Maurice Hurst and Zadarius Smith, just Okoronkwo, I think was his, whatever his name is, 54, I think. They just all penetrating, dominating. You got the linebackers crashing in. They just get out physical in the run game against the Browns. And it doesn't matter how hard the Browns have been playing before this. And the defense has, the team's been bad, but the defense for them has been pretty good. They always step it up another level against the Bengals, it feels like. And this was no different in the run game, where they couldn't get to the run game if they wanted to throughout this game.
Yeah, well, we can talk more about the run game. We certainly have to hit on the offensive line. Plenty more on the offense. We will get to the defense as well, but let's stick with the offense coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, in the Bengals. Well, they're back home this week against the Philadelphia Eagles. The game moved, by the way. So if you're planning on coming, it is a 1 Eastern kick, which is very, very awesome for people like me, Jake, and probably Sands as well. It's just better than 425. And it doesn't matter when the game is with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, when you go to FanDuel.com, you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So the Bengals slight favorites right now over the Eagles. I expect that line to move a bit. We'll see if the Bengals are favored all week long. Regardless, get to America's #1 sportsbook. Go to FanDuel.com and get in on the action, from same game parlays, any prop bets that you want, and over, under, so much more. One spot, FanDuel.com. Again, get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com.
Today's show also brought to you by LinkedIn, who knows that if you need to hire for your small business and you want to find quality candidates that are right for the role, quality professionals that will help your business achieve its goals, well, LinkedIn is the place to go. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and, importantly, for free. It's not just a job board. They'll help you find professionals you can't find anywhere else, because even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. And that is what LinkedIn is great for. In a given month, 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking at LinkedIn, you're not looking in the right place. Not only that, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. They know that it can be difficult when you've got a lot of hats as a small business, and that's why they're there to make it easier for you. 2.5 million small businesses already using LinkedIn for hiring. You can post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, Sands, let's stick with the run game and let's go to a play in the first half, that holding call. It's back-to-back weeks now, 67 holding calls. I think he's kind of got his arms up in the air like, what do you want me to do? How similar was this one to last week against the Giants? Cost them a touchdown last week. This week cost them a big run and certainly points in the first half. Are they similar? Are they different? Take us through those calls, whether you agree or not as well.
Don't agree. I mean, it's similar.
You don't agree? Let them know. Let them know.
Don't agree. It feels like it's almost like you understood in the sentence. Go get me sandwiches. I don't agree. It's just the defender is falling down trying to make the tackle, and I didn't even see like a jersey pull. On the last one, I heard maybe the hand was too far outside. I got the back copy on this from NFL Pro. I did not get the front, so maybe there's something with the hand there. But from everything I've seen, nothing that I saw was like that should be holding. Let's bring it back. I feel like the biggest thing we keep missing on these holding calls is, to me, isn't holding supposed to be restricting movement? Not like you saw something, a tiny jersey pull away from the play, and he lets go right after. That's not a hold to me. And this isn't a hold either. The guy's going down trying to make a tackle. He lands on top of him and finishes him. How is that a hold? That's ridiculous to me. So no, I did not think it was a hold. And I didn't even think Cordell Wilson played a particularly good game, but that was just the cherry on top of him playing not a great game. It was just like, even his good play is called back for a hold, and now you probably view that in a negative light.
Yeah, it was a really great play for Chase Brown on the other side of things. Like the cutback and the explosion, very visible. The difference between Chase Brown and Zach Moss at this point grows starker and starker as runners every week. I think that the contrast is just growing, because Chase Brown is a much above average explosive player, good athlete, great speed, great acceleration, gets downhill quickly. Zach Moss, by comparison, looks like a plotter. I think slightly below average as an athlete at running back at this point in his NFL career. And so the difference between those guys as runners seems to be growing. The difference in their workload as runners seems to be growing as well. Both guys had pass protection issues this week, but they still seem to trust Moss significantly more in that role, getting triple Chase Brown's pass blocking snaps this week and more passing play snaps overall. That split does continue to be interesting, though. Chase Brown out snapping Zach Moss again this week. Will be interesting to watch how that continues. Overall, were they as diverse as we've seen them in the run game? Did they try a whole bunch of things and just nothing was working because of that out physical issue in the trenches you were talking about earlier? Or was it that they didn't get to the right concepts at times?
I think it's hard to make a declaration on that because they ran the ball so little in the first half. I kind of agree with the idea of like, hey, it's not working. But at the same time, I think I was looking up around halftime. I was like, they've got 4 carries between the 2 running backs. That's hard to have a diverse run game when it's 4 runs. And then most of the runs came in that 4-minute situation where they did some different stuff, not a lot. It was a little bit of the same type of runs that, their staple stuff in there. They can't do it. They can't run in 4-minute drill, it seems like, especially not against these defenses that are very physical up front. So I don't know if I would put it as they weren't very diverse. I thought they were a little diverse. I love the formation, that pistol diamond thing. That is something that's huge in college, and that gets you some good one-on-ones. If you go look up Justin Blackman's highlight reel, you'll see a bunch of pistol diamond from Mike Gundy, and that Cam Newton ran it, but that's for quarterback run game stuff at Auburn. It's just something that was huge in college, and it could make sense for the Bengals because they were getting some single high looks out of that, and they weren't rolling to Tampa because you have to defend against the run in this, and they never ran a play out of it. They always motion somebody out and whatever. That actually kind of messes with linebackers too, though. They got some good play action out of that. I will say the run game out of that, I don't know what was going on. It was only tosses. They were just tossing the ball out of pistol, and that was their play fake too. So maybe that's why they're like, if we're going to fake the toss, we have to actually run a couple of these, but they're bad. The tosses did not work out of that look. And I mean, you don't have a soft edge. You don't have a guy over there to try to crack down and run around him. So it also doesn't make that much sense angle wise for a toss to work from this formation. But then you figure out, I think the one thing I have a complaint about when it comes to the design part of this, you need to figure out a way to run out of this diamond formation as well. Like the passes and the play action stuff was cool, but you have to be able to also run the ball downhill and threaten defenses, because eventually they're going to stop loading the box against that look, even if you have three guys back there that are, four guys in the backfield, including the quarterback.
Mike, you mentioned it earlier that you thought overall this offensive line held up against the stunts and the different pass protection issues that the Browns have caused in the past, as well as they've done, especially in Cleveland, which I think everyone saw, especially early on. Orlando Brown Jr. goes down late in the second quarter, doesn't come back. What did you see out of Cody Ford? Because I think a lot of people on Monday are like, oh my God, is Cody Ford going to be the starting left tackle? And if so, for how long? We don't know the latest on Brown outside of what I said on Sunday night. Calf issue, could miss some time, may not. We'll see. Zach Taylor will have talked by the time we post the show. But as far as Cody Ford, what did you see?
It's me. I'm one of those people that's worried about Cody Ford at left tackle. Mike, go ahead.
I two minds here. What my expectations were very low, and he exceeded them. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. That doesn't mean I want Cody Ford or I think Cody Ford's going to do well, or really, I'm praying Orlando comes back too. But for his assignment, now you could argue about the assignment being pretty easy with it being a lot of quick game and a lot of help for him. But for his assignment, he was able to do his job in pass protection and not lose within 1 second. Now, if
standards,
1.5 seconds. Look, I've watched Jackson Carman. I've watched a lot of guys. On
Bobby Hart,
Bobby Hart,
Isaiah Prince,
Fred Johnson, who's going to be there next week, left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was, it was on par with the Fred Johnson type performances, which I don't know if I was expecting. Maybe my expectations were too low going in. So like the offense they knew it was a liability up front, so they were working around it. And when they wanted to throw the ball, they'd give him quite a bit of help. I mean, I remember a triple team against Myles Garrett one time that he got the rep where the running back hit him, Cody Ford's there, and then Cordell Volson comes running over too. He's like, let me pass off this defensive tackle to Karras. This isn't a stunt, but I need to go help my guy, make sure that he has a 0-way go, not a 1-way go or a 2-way go. He's got nowhere to go. So, yeah, I think it was a situation where the offense really did a good job of masking the issue, but also he wasn't getting beat on the snap. It would take 1.5 seconds, and you can technically function that way. And they were able to score 2 touchdowns that way. So it's not an abject disaster.
They were able to get there. They were able to change the offense pretty entirely after Orlando Brown left the game as well. I thought that the unit as a whole played worse after Brown left. I don't think there's much argument to be had there. They immediately gave up 2 sacks as soon as he left the game. There were issues, to be sure. They managed to overcome those enough to score a couple of touchdowns. But on the whole, they do need to figure things out against these defenses that have had their number. They need to be able to adapt more quickly. They need to have, I don't know how to say it other than a game plan that works. And next week, they're challenged again with the Vic Fangio unit that they, again, haven't seen a Vic Fangio coach defense outside of Denver since 2021. That, again, will be a challenge for them next week. And you need the offense to come out a little bit better and find more success, run more plays. You can't have the defense playing 20 more plays per game than the offense because the offense can't sustain drives. that'll need to change. And so despite some of the things that you can point to and say, well, some of these things were okay, some of these things come down to getting out schemed, out coached, those things do need to improve. And that's my bottom line personally on the offensive side of the ball. But there was some good stuff to talk about on the defensive side of the ball, and they've stacked a couple of performances as well. Let's transition and talk defense to finish the show coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app you need to download right now. Whether it's Sunday's game, Bengals, Eagles, and you want to go to it, well, you got to get Game Time. Game Time is the app you need. And right now they have Game Time Picks. It's a new feature that is going to make your life so much easier because it filters out all the fluff. Game Time Picks shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time also has all-in pricing. You toggle this feature on and it shows the total up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, and the seat views. You're talking about a panoramic seat view, so you know exactly what it's going to look like when you sit down at the stadium or for any live event. So whether it's NFL games, NBA coming around, or maybe you want to go to the World Series, go to Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account after downloading the Game Time app and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
James, before we pivot to defense, I want to give you an opportunity to get a last word in on the offense. If you have anything else to add there, any other points you want to hit, otherwise, let's get to the defense.
2 weeks ago, we would have taken 3 and 4, however they got there. And I keep defaulting to that. And it's ugly, but do you trust Joe Burrow and company to figure it out? I trust Joe Burrow more than anyone on the team or in the organization. So, yeah, ugly. At least they got a couple dubs, and now they put themselves in this position. But, yeah, let's get into the defense, because I think the defense, again, 2 weeks ago, if you would have said, all right, Daniel Jones, Deshaun Watson, you got to go on the road. It's like, all right, well, can they do enough? And Sands, they were able to make plays. They were able to get some pressure. Not just Trey Hendrickson either. Let's start there with this pass rush. BJ Hill, Sheldon Rankins, notice Sam Hubbard, but obviously they're led by Trey Hendrickson. What did you think of the defensive line?
I thought the defensive line was really good, both rushing the passer and defending the run. It was, yes, Trey Hendrickson is like a superstar, and he had another performance that was like a superstar level game, but the other guys were showing up, and a guy that's been like the secret superstar is BJ Hill. I mean, he was awesome in this game. I went back and watched. I was like, man, BJ Hill, look at him. He's protecting his linebackers on this double team. There was a double team. It was like the second play, and running wide zone at him. He not only holds that double, he ends up tossing both guys on the ground at some point during that play. And Logan Wilson goes and makes a tackle. And he just, in the stat sheet, that's just one tackle for Logan Wilson for 1 yard or whatever. But BJ Hill makes it happen. It's one of those situations of, Ray Lewis, one of the best linebackers of all time. But yeah, got some of his production was helped because he always had like Tony Siragusa and Haloti Ngata in front of him, able to do that. Now, I'm not saying that he's one of those guys, and I'm not saying that Logan Wilson's Ray Lewis, but what I am saying is that it's a correlated effect between what your defensive tackles are able to do for you as a linebacker. If they're playing well, you're playing well, and we saw that a lot last year when Zach Carter's no longer on the team, and Jay Tufele would get in there. We saw it this year when those guys would get in there. Linebackers are suddenly playing a little poor. What's going on? Now you're getting BJ Hill, you get Sheldon Rankins back, and I thought Sheldon Rankins was up and down the run game. Chris Jenkins had a decent game in the run game. McKinley Jackson got some penetration. So everybody on that defensive tackle room, I think, has played at or above expectations. And to me, led by BJ Hill, who's playing well above what my expectations were coming into that game. And this year, I think he's really stepped up for this season.
Crazy when you get all those guys back healthy, how much of a difference that's made, going from 3 guys playing a lion's share of the snaps who are no longer playing on Sundays to the rotation they have at defensive tackle. Hard to overstate how much of a difference that has made. But another part of the difference you could argue is that they've played 2 of the worst offenses in the NFL, at least without Malik Neighbors in New York. I know they had a decent game against Seattle the week prior, but a couple of teams that don't inspire a ton of confidence with their quarterback play this year. The Browns using 3 different quarterbacks in this game. How do you think things are looking overall? You take a big picture view, you consider the quality of competition, you consider that the health of guys returning, losing Dax Hill to an injury, of course, and that change at corner to DJ Turner. Lou Anarumo in terms of getting guys into positions to make plays and getting guys into positions to be able to execute at a high level. How has that looked from a big picture perspective to you over the last 2 weeks? And what are your takeaways there as far as how sustainable that bit of success has been?
They've done a great job defending the run against these teams that don't really have a quarterback that's worth attacking. But I do think so. I would give the defensive performance overall the past 2 weeks great, but I think you could just see a little bit of the cracks in the armor, just like guys running wide open. Deshaun Watson's checking it down on 3rd and 14. DTR not able to hit anything, throwing the ball, the overthrows. They made good on that overthrow. They made good on the tip balls. They got 2 interceptions that way. But it just feels like if they faced a good quarterback, would they still have these level of performances? And that I don't know. And I almost actually think you started to see that with Jameis, where when he came in there, he was willing to attack those windows, and willing to throw the ball to the open guys that are down the field, and even hitting guys that were open, they dropped the ball. So it could have been even better when you look at Jerry Jeudy. So I think it was good the past 2 weeks, but I don't think you could rest on that and be like, oh, the defense is good. Okay. So once the offense gets good, it'll be just both good units going forward. To me, I see the cracks in the armor on this defense, where this offense still might have to score a lot of points if they run to a quarterback that's willing to take these shots and throw into these windows, where I think guys are sometimes running open. Now, I always give benefit of the doubt. The ball's not thrown, so we don't know if the corner could have recovered, but at the same time, it looks open to me. And I'm not a quarterback, but it looks like there's opportunities for them.
Yeah, I think my expectation really hasn't changed over the past couple of weeks. It's like, all right, now they're healthy. Just be competent on defense. Make a couple of plays. Now, when you're facing a bad quarterback, it needs to be more than a couple of plays. But make some plays, force a couple of turnovers. That's great. That's what this offense needs. And I think most weeks, the offense is still going to be what the straw that stirs the drink, even though the past couple of weeks it's been unique. And there's always good pass rushers, but the past 2 weeks it's been pretty unique on the road. The Browns, we know the thorn in the side that they've been on this offense, continue to be still, quite frankly. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. Like, do I expect them to shut down the Eagles? Like, no. I think the Eagles should be able to score points on Sunday.
The 3 road wins for the Bengals this year are an interesting note, overcoming a couple of good defensive lines on the road. 0-4 at home.
Oh, yeah. 0-4 at home. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in a year where they only have 8 home games to 9 road games, they're halfway through their home schedule with 5 road games to go. Am I doing that math right? Yeah, I am. Mike, before we wrap up on the defense, thoughts on safety play the last couple of weeks. This has been a area of the defense.
They're 0-3 at home. Kansas City was on the road.
Yeah, 3-1.
Oh, that's right. Yep. Making all sorts
names
of
and numbers for Jake. It's names and numbers now.
It's symbols this time. Reading at symbols on the schedule that I'm looking at on ESPN.
It sounds like reading's the issue.
Reading while trying to talk. Yeah. Multitasking. Humans not good at it, despite what you might believe. Wanted to get to the safeties while we are on the topic of the defense before we tangent entirely into my inability to multitask while talking. The level of safety play the last couple of weeks, Mike, after it was a high level of scrutiny for this defense this year. Geno Stone, of course, sustains an injury. Hopefully that's not as bad as it seems. It sounds like it's not as bad as it seemed. Von Bell, also a little bit dinged up in this game. Jordan Battle getting 19 snaps in this game, even on the field a little bit before those injuries toward the end of the game. What were your thoughts on safety play the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I thought it was better, especially this week. Last week, I thought it was good, like solid level play. I think Jordan Battle does a good job when he gets in there. Doesn't get in there enough to really have huge takeaway, but enough to be like, okay, I want to see more. And this game was, I thought, Geno Stone's best game. Yeah, he came in with that interception. He was also the guy that sniffed out that reverse pass, flea flicker thing and was able to get over the top on that, not allow that to happen. Felt like he actually came down and made some plays in run support. And he came off the roof of the defense when he needed to. It just overall, it always feels weird judging safeties because they have such a small sample size of balls being thrown at them. But this was one of those games where it actually looked like Geno Stone was really improving in this defense, getting into it, coming into his own. So it's kind of sad to see him go down with an injury. Maybe it's not as serious as it looked, and it's what it seems like in the locker room, whatever. Von Bell, he's done his job. I think he's not like a liability out there, but he's also, the lack of athleticism does show up at times. And I would like to see a little bit more Jordan Battle, but I think you can't complain about the safety play the past 2 weeks, and especially this week.
Yeah, they need those guys, especially Geno, Rankins, like these guys that they came in that they paid to come in to make an impact. They missed that early on, and so it was nice to see Geno make some plays for sure. Hopefully, it's not too bad.
Yeah. I think getting healthy on the defensive line has made a big difference the last couple of weeks. I think the quality of competition has made a big difference the last couple of weeks. The rotation on the defensive line has been nice to see, with really just Trey Hendrickson and BJ Hill playing slightly more snaps than you would ideally like to see them play, but they're also your best players creating the most disruption. So you understand why they're on the field, and they're doing a good job, honestly, of giving Trey as many pass rushing opportunities as possible. 44 pass rushing snaps to 12 run defense snaps, according to PFF charting on Sunday. So you like to see that kind of split for a guy who, yes, he's okay as a run defender, don't get me wrong, but the clear strength there is getting him on the field in situations where he can pin his ears back. That's going to do it, though, for this episode. You can find Mike, again, at Bengals_Sands on Twitter, where he's got a bunch of the clips, probably of a bunch of plays that we talked about. If you want to go get a visual aid, probably should have said that at the beginning of the show. And you can find his writing as well at Bengals Talk SI. Podcast is It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati for Mike, which you can find, a couple days a week, right? As well. And that's going to do it, like I said, for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.